Have you ever played this game, Where's Waldo? Remember that? We used to have a book when the kids were little, and you'd look at it. Sometimes, the first time you look at it for maybe a few seconds, and then you find it. And then the other times you look at it and you think, he's not on here anyplace. He just can't be on here. Well, the reason I brought this up today is because I'm going to read a passage of Scripture that we're all familiar with. We've probably taught it in Sunday school several times. We've taught it in Vacation Bible School in times. And I want you to see if you can figure out where you're at or where you might be at in this story. And the reason I am doing this is because, if we can read a Bible story and we can't see ourselves in that story someplace, we're missing the point. Because God is not just about giving you a bunch of facts and figures and saying you figure it out from here, but He's always got that personal touch that He wants to have you and I involved in whatever He's trying to teach, whatever He's doing. Okay, Mark chapter 10, verses 46 through 52. And they came to Jericho, and as He was going out from Jericho with His disciples and a great multitude, a blind beggar named Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the road. And when he heard that it was Jesus the Nazarene, he began to cry out and say, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And many were sternly telling him to be quiet. But he kept crying out all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus stopped and said, call him here. And they called the blind man, saying to him, take courage, arise, he is calling for you. And casting aside his cloak, and he jumped up and came to Jesus. And answering him, Jesus said, what do you want me to do for you? And the blind man said to him, Rabboni, I want to regain my sight. And Jesus said to him, go your way, your faith has made you well. And immediately he regained his sight and began following him on the road. Now then, in this story, we see the main characters, which is Jesus and Bartimaeus, but we also see a crowd. Can you imagine what it had been like to have been Jesus or his disciples, and every place you go, it seems like you've got a crowd? Just people thronging around. And in that crowd, I guess this is what I've been thinking about this past week, was, who all was in that crowd? They didn't really recognize Jesus as the Messiah, so it's not like that they're following who they believe is the future leader of their nation, the deliverer, the one that they had heard about for generations and generations. This was not him as far as they were concerned, because he was a good man, he was a gentleman, he was an honest man, he was a great teacher, and he performed some miracles. And just for kicks, he put the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the religious rulers in their place from time to time, just not by being mean or indifferent, just by turning a question around and posing it back to him. And they saw some great things come out of him, but they couldn't figure out who he was. I mean, if he had been the Messiah, according to what they had in mind, he would have been a bold and daring person. He would have been a ruler. He would have been a forceful person. And he would have had a name, more like a godlike name, not a common name like Jesus. So I'm sure that in that crowd that came that day, just like every other crowd, there were those who were just curious as to who he was, trying to figure him out, trying to figure out what was going on. And in that curiosity, they just kind of watched from a distance, but they really didn't participate. Can you remember whenever, if you were not raised in church, you may have experienced that whenever you first started going to church. I know I did. You want to see what's going on, but you don't really want to be involved in it too much because, after all, they might ask you to do something. So that's why we should just have back rows in church, just back pews. because everybody that comes in that just wants to be curious wants to sit in the back row, just as far away from everybody as they can, maybe off in a corner someplace. Just leave me alone. I'm just checking this out. That's all I'm doing. And there was those people, I'm sure, in that crowd that day. Also in that crowd, I believe, were the wannabes. The wannabe Christians, the wannabe followers of Christ. They wanted to follow Christ, but then, this guy is not really offering a whole lot, because he's not offering us riches, he's not offering us homes, he's not offering us a job, he's offering us a way of life, but his teachings, man, they're tough. He teaches things like loving your enemies. Who wants to do that? He's teaching things like, to forgive, not just once, not even 7 times, not even 70 times 7, but as often as it's required to forgive. Well, I'd like to be that way, but, my gosh, that's tough. He wants us to be nice to the Samaritans. Who likes the Samaritans? Who wants anything to do with them? Leave them alone. Just leave them completely out of it. He also has teachings on things like, if a Roman soldier compels you to carry his load for a mile, which was required by law, to don't go 1 mile, but go 2. I don't want to take it 3 steps, let alone 2 miles. So, I would like to, but I just can't see how it's going to work for me to follow him whenever he has these far-reaching, requests and these far-reaching teachings, So I'm just going to sit back with the curious and see if I can figure this out. And, I'd like to be a better person, but, asking an awful lot and asking just a tremendous amount. And also in the crowd that day, I'm sure, just like with every crowd, and we have proof of these in here, were the self-righteous. Look at me. I've got it all together. I'm doing everything right, and what I'm not doing right, you don't know about. So I'm just, I stand out from the crowd. I stand out so much from the crowd that the rest of you guys just get behind me. I'm gonna help lead this. And then if Jesus ever amounts to anything, I'm going to be right there with him, and he's going to say, I want you first, because you are so good, and you are so pure, and you are so holy. And we're not going to be bothered with all these drifters and low lifes and all this stuff. We have proof of those guys there. They were the ones that whenever Bartimaeus was crying out when he realized who was coming, they says, why don't you be quiet? Just hush, be quiet. We don't have time for you guys. We're doing important stuff here. We're walking with Jesus, and he might pick me to do something. And so we have those self-righteous. We have the show seekers, what I call the show seekers. Let's go see what he's going to do today. We've heard that he did this over in this other town. We heard that he did this whenever he was over at this other place. We heard that he did this whenever he told them to cast their nets into the sea, and they brought out all these fish. We've heard of all these things that he's done. We have heard that the lame walk, and the deaf hear, and the blind see. We want to see something. We want to put on a show for us. Put on a show for us. We don't really want to participate. We just want to see a show. We want to go to a church where they have big youth programs so that we can drop our kids off and leave them. We want to go to a church where they have great music because we're just tired of that old stuff. But don't ask me to do anything. I want to be a spectator, and I want to be entertained. And in the world that we live today, if there's one thing that I believe is keeping and holding back the church, is the entertainment. We have to be entertained so much in every aspect, it seems like, of life. We want to be entertained. We want to be pleased. It's not doing anything, it's just let me entertain you type philosophy. And that's what the show seekers were looking for. Show me something. Show me something. I want to see something happen. I want to be able to go to the coffee shop tomorrow and say, boy, if you'd have been with me yesterday, you would have seen this guy do this. Not that I'm going to participate in it or anything, but I got a story to tell. I got a story to tell. And then in that crowd, I believe there was those who was looking for a miracle. They needed a miracle in their life, and they needed it now, they thought. And whenever you got some guy sitting alongside the road hollering out, hush up, I was here first. Just be quiet. I was here first. You be quiet over there. Now, it might have been that everybody knew Bartimaeus, and they may have known why he was blind. Because he didn't say, I want to see for the first time. He says, I want to regain my sight. It may have been something, a mistake or a lifestyle that he had chosen previously that caused him to lose his eyesight. We don't know. But in that crowd, I believe that there was those who were saying, I want to be first in line whenever he starts passing out miracles. I need a miracle. I just need this to happen in my life, and you just get out of my way because I was here first. Kind of like the guy that was laying at the pool of Bethesda, and Jesus comes up to him, and he says, do you wish to be healed? And he says, I've been here, and every time the angels of the Lord stir the water, the first one in gets to be healed, and before I can get there, somebody beats me to it. And I always wondered if Jesus didn't want to say, but that wasn't the question I asked you. I asked you if you wanted to be healed. And he says, take up your pallet and go home. I want to be healed, and I want to be first in line. I want to make sure that I get in line so that before the healing stops, I've got my need met. And then I believe that there was, and we have proof of this, the excited and devoted followers. The ones who realize that, no, I can't live up to all the teachings that he teaches, but I want to try. I want to experience the peace that he has, even though he's got all these people who are against him all the time, and yet he seems to just be going on. I want to have that assurance and that confidence that his Father is going to take care of him, so his Father must be going to take care of me too. Because, and here's the deal. When Bartimaeus was sitting beside the road, we don't know if this was a place where he always sat or not, or whether somebody says, I think you'd be better off today coming out here and sitting because there's going to be a lot of traffic by here pretty soon. And we all know that if you're going to beg, you need to be in a high traffic area. Get your cardboard out and your black magic marker out and stand at the intersection where there's a stoplight. Don't pay attention to those help wanted signs behind you. Just get the sign out and ask for whatever you can get. And whenever they stop, stand there and look desolate. That's where you're going to come into the biggest good. We don't know why maybe Bartimaeus always sat in that spot. But at any rate, he was sitting there, and he was listening carefully for anybody who might pass by. Now, I can only imagine, based on the Good Samaritan story, that there were people who saw him and recognized him and knew that he was blind that learned how to tiptoe past him without making a sound. So he was listening carefully, waiting for anybody to come by that he might beg for just whatever they had to offer. And all of a sudden, he starts hearing a crowd. What's going on? Is this going to be a good crowd that is going to reward me and make me to where I don't have to come back here tomorrow or for a couple of days even? Or is it going to be a crowd that's going to come and take away what little I still have left? I don't know. And so with every person that came by, I can just see in my own imagination that Bartimaeus was saying, who is this? What's going on? What's going on? And finally somebody says, Jesus is coming. I've heard of him. I've heard stories of him. Somebody told me I need to get with him because he heals people. He helps people. He ministers to people. That's what I need. And so he cries out, Son of David. Now, I mentioned earlier that they didn't recognize Jesus as the Messiah because he just wasn't military. He just wasn't what that they had been ingrained into their thinking that he was going to be. But here was a man who needed help in the worst kind of way, as far as he was concerned, Bartimaeus, and he addresses him as Son of David, which was a reference to the coming Messiah. And he honored him with that. And he says, Son of David. And this is the neat part. He doesn't say, I need a healing. He says, have mercy on me. Have mercy on me. What does it mean to ask for mercy? You know, he didn't say, I need you to heal me so that I can see, so that I can get on with my life. He said, Son of David, the person in the order of the Messiah, you have the power, you have the ability, and I need you to just have mercy on me. Bartimaeus, even if nobody else in that crowd knew why he was there. He knew what his past was, even if nobody else did. He knew that he did not deserve anything from God based on his own merits. So what he was asking for was unmerited favor so that God could do whatever God chose was the right thing to do. Son of David, have mercy on me. You be quiet. Son of David, have mercy on me. I told you to be quiet. So he just kept getting louder and kept getting louder. He was going to be heard until Jesus comes up and he says, have him come to me. Now this is the devoted follower, I believe, that comes up to Bartimaeus. And the original text, the words that they use means to take courage and be of good cheer. And he comes to Bartimaeus, who's sitting there, and he says, Bartimaeus, take courage and be of good cheer. Jesus is calling for you. Think about that for a second. Do you remember whenever Jesus first spoke to your heart and compelled you to give your life over to him? Did it make you sad or did it make you happy? Happy. Did it make you feel like that you're worthy? Probably unworthy, but blessed. And here was one of the followers who came up and he says, I've got good news for you. I have got exceptionally good news for you. I've got the best news that you'll ever hear. Take courage. Don't be afraid. To be of good cheer, because Jesus is calling for you. Jesus wants you to come to him. And you can see in the scripture and you can see in your imagination that Bartimaeus takes his coat off, jumps up and runs to him. And you know, that's quite a feat whenever you don't know where, you can't see where you're going. And he comes to him and he says, Rabboni, which means my master. Have mercy on me. And he says, and Jesus just asks him pretty plainly, he says, what would you like for me to do for you? And he says, my master, I would just like to have my sight back. Just like to have my sight back. Again, referring to him as Lord and Master. And Jesus says, your faith has made you whole. Your faith has made you well. And immediately his sight was regained. What did Barnabas do then? Did he just leave? Go home and celebrate? It says that he began to follow along with them. Now then, I said, where's Waldo? Where are you? I've been in pretty near every one of those situations at different times of my life. I've been in the just curious, leave me alone. I just want to check this out. I want to see what's going on. I don't really want to be a part of it, but I'm just wanting to check it out. That's all. Just back off. Just back off. I'm just checking it out. I'm just curious. Then I went to the part where, well, I would like, it looks like a good way of life, but I just don't see how I could do that. I don't see how I could be transformed into a person who could actually love somebody who I don't like. I don't see how I could act with the same characteristics that Jesus does. It's just not possible for me because I've got too much of myself in me. I've went through the stage where I thought I was just doing pretty good, to the point where it's easy to look down on somebody else. I've been to the point where I don't care what everybody else needs, but man, I need something, and I need it now, and I need it first. We all have that selfish interest in us at times, but what I want to be is that person who says, Jesus is calling for you. Jesus is speaking to you. This is your day. This is your time. Be courageous. In other words, don't back away from it. Be of good cheer. This is the best thing that was ever going to happen to you. Jesus is calling your name. That feeling you've got inside of you that you're wondering what I need to do now, that's Jesus speaking to your heart. I want to be one of those followers that can give you the good news that thing that's stirring inside of you, that's Christ. And He's calling for you. He's wanting to make your life whole. He's wanting to give you more than what you ever dreamed possible. Not maybe in material things, but in peace, in security, and in spiritual welfare. I want to be one of those people who has the excitement enough and the interest enough in other people that whenever Jesus calls, just let me help be a messenger. Let me help lead you to the Lord. He takes his coat off and he takes off running. I bet the same guy who says, be of good cheer, Jesus is calling for you, and he says, here, run that direction. Run that direction. He's right there. He's running. Let me just point you in the right direction, and I'll make sure you get there. Now then, maybe that you have the same goal that I do. I know I can never be Jesus. There's only one Him. And fortunately, right now in my life, I'm not blind Bartimaeus, even though I still need His mercy. But I would like to be one in the crowd that just helps point people in the right direction. Instead of trying to hush them up, instead of just being a spectator, instead of just being a bystander. Christianity is a contact sport. It's a contact activity. Sit on the sidelines, and all you're going to get is a show, and you're never going to enjoy it. But if you want to get something out of it, you've got to be involved. And I can tell you from experience, there's nothing that will thrill your heart any more than helping to lead a person to Christ. Doesn't matter who they are, doesn't matter where they've been, doesn't matter what they've done. But just seeing that beginning of that transformation and all of a sudden the new hope and the new life that is possible. Now, how do we get to that point? To me, I believe that the only way we're going to get excited about leading others to Christ is to reflect on what Christ has already done for us. You ever take it for granted? You ever just think, well, I guess I was good enough, and so I just kind of fell into it. But without His mercy, without His grace, where would I be today? What if God had no grace? What if God says, here's the rules, you either follow them or you're out? That sounds like man's laws. What if he had no mercy? No, you don't deserve it. You're out. But God's grace and God's mercy has allowed us to be where we're at today. And until we appreciate what he has already done for us, it's awful hard for us to share that appreciation and share that excitement and share that gift with anyone else. Just being curious, standing on the outside, won't get it. Not being involved, won't get it. But whenever you have that excitement, it says, be of good cheer. Don't get discouraged. Jesus is calling. Sometimes we don't say it in words, but sometimes we can see it in people's lives. That's the person in the crowd I want to be. Now, if you're not there, but you've recognized yourself in one of the other spots, then you realize there's still a journey ahead to get to that point. Jesus wants to tell each and every one of us, he wants to ask us first, what can I do for you? How can I make you feel whole? Remember, the first thing he asked for was for mercy. For mercy. Let us pray for mercy so that God might use us and equip us and empower us to do just exactly what he wants us to do, to reach out to others so that they might have hope and they might have assurance, and that we in turn will renew our excitement for being a member of the body of Christ. Jesus went to the cross so that we could have this. He died so that we could live. He gave us the example so that we could follow. He's done it, all the hard work. We're just trying to follow in suit. And in following in suit means to share it with one another. As we've come here to worship this morning, I pray that God has spoken to your heart as he's spoken to mine. And that if there's a decision that you need to make today, as we stand to do the hymn of invitation, won't you respond? Hymn is Draw Me Near, number 534, verses 1, 2, and 3. Let's all stand.